I shouldn't have listened to it. That's what the specialists keep telling me now. The recording came to me through an encrypted email from Vince, a radio astronomer I'd known since college. We weren't close anymore. Our paths had diverged years ago, but we still exchanged professional courtesies. This wasn't one of them. "Listen to this," the message read. "Picked it up on the Allen array last night. 31.2184 gigahertz. Never heard anything like it. Don't share until I publish." Simple enough, innocuous even. Just another scientist excited about a discovery. I was alone in my apartment that night, rain lashing against the windows of my 17th floor high-rise, the steady rhythm almost drowning out the sounds of the city below. It was the kind of weather that makes you feel isolated, even in the middle of 8 million people. The perfect backdrop for what came next. I downloaded the attached audio file, unusual for astronomical data, which typically comes as complex numerical datasets, rather than something you can simply play. But Vince was always one for dramatic presentations. The file was labeled simply contact-703.wave. I plugged in my noise-canceling headphones, settled into my ergonomic chair, and pressed play. The sound began as a soft hum, barely audible even at maximum volume, a sine wave, pure and unbroken, hovering at the edge of perception. Then it changed, not gradually, not with any kind of transition or warning. It simply became something else between one microsecond and the next. The new sound defied description. It wasn't music. It wasn't speech. It wasn't mechanical or natural or anything I could categorize within my understanding of acoustics. The closest I can come is to say it sounded like overlapping voices speaking a language where every syllable was wrong, consonants that shouldn't physically be possible to produce, vowels that seemed to fold in onto themselves, all delivered with a precision that no human vocal apparatus could possibly achieve. I felt it more than heard it, a pressure behind my eyes, a vibration in my molars, a subtle renegotiation of my thoughts as the sound continued. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to stop the playback, but I couldn't bring myself to press the key. Something in the sound compelled attention, demanded to be heard in its entirety. 3 minutes and 42 seconds. That's how long the recording lasted. When it finally ended, I sat motionless in my chair, aware of a silence that felt unnatural in its completeness. The rain still fell outside. Cars still honked 17 floors below, but those sounds seemed muffled, distant, as if something was filtering my perception of ordinary reality. I reached for my phone to call Vince, to ask him what the hell he'd sent me, but my hand froze mid-motion. On my computer screen, the audio playback software showed something impossible. The recording was still playing. The progress bar continued to advance even though no sound came through my headphones. That's when I noticed the reflection in my monitor. A silhouette standing behind me that shouldn't have been there. I live alone. I spun around to find nothing. An empty apartment, exactly as it should be. But as I turned back to my computer, movement caught my eye. The silhouette again, visible only in the reflection, moving slightly closer. That was 12 days ago. Since then, nothing has been the same. The specialists call it auditory pattern-induced pareidolia, a fancy clinical term for hearing things that aren't there because your brain got scrambled by a weird sound. They assure me it's temporary, that with the proper medication and therapy, I'll stop perceiving the anomalies. They don't use terms like hallucination or psychosis, not to my face anyway, but I see it in their careful note-taking, their exchanged glances when they think I'm not looking. They don't believe me about the frequency, about what it's doing. I tried to contact Vince the morning after I first listened to the recording. His phone went straight to voicemail. His university email bounced back with an automated response. Dr. Vincent Carver is currently on extended leave for urgent matters. Please contact the department chair. The department chair knew nothing, or claimed to know nothing. Extended personal leave effective immediately. No forwarding contact information. When I mentioned the Allen array and the frequency, she became noticeably uncomfortable, repeating that she had no information about Dr. Carver's current research projects. I should have left it alone, should have written it off as some elaborate prank, or understood that Vince might have his reasons for disappearing after sending me that sound. But the frequency was still playing in my head, an undercurrent beneath my conscious thoughts, and standing behind me, visible only in reflections, was still that silhouette, growing more distinct with each passing day. On the third day, I could make out details, tall, unnaturally thin, with limbs that seemed too long for its frame. On the fifth day, it had moved from reflections to shadows, a distortion in my peripheral vision, always vanishing when I turned to look directly at it. On the seventh day, I began to hear it breathing when I tried to sleep. The breathing wasn't normal, not the rhythmic inhalation and exhalation of lungs processing oxygen. It was arrhythmic, with pauses that stretched too long, followed by sudden gaps that sounded like in-verse screams, air being drawn in with desperate violence. That's when I sought help. When I walked into the emergency psychiatric unit at New York Presbyterian and told them I thought I was having a psychotic break. I didn't mention the frequency then, didn't mention Vince, just described the symptoms, the apparition, the breathing, the growing sense that something was occupying my personal space in a way I couldn't directly perceive. They were kind, professional even, gave me antipsychotics and scheduled follow-up appointments. The medication dulled everything, wrapped my thoughts in cotton wool, and made the world seem slightly out of focus. But it didn't stop the breathing, didn't banish the silhouette. If anything, the drugs made it worse, weakened whatever mental barriers had been keeping the thing at a distance. On the 9th day, I broke down and told Dr. Rainier, my assigned psychiatrist, about the frequency, about Vince's disappearance, about my growing conviction that the sound had opened something, created a connection between our reality and somewhere else, something else. That's when they admitted me for observation. For my own safety, they said. 3 days of intensive evaluation, medication adjustments, group therapy sessions where other patients talked about voices in their heads or government surveillance while I sat silently, unable to explain that my situation was fundamentally different, that the frequency was real, that what it had brought with it was real. They released me this morning with a new prescription and strict instructions to maintain my medication schedule. Dr. Rainier clearly believed I was stabilizing, that the delusions were responding to treatment. I nodded and promised to take the pills exactly as directed. I lied. Because last night, while the ward was quiet and the medication had worn off enough for me to think clearly, I heard it again. The frequency, playing faintly from somewhere down the hospital corridor, not in my head this time, but external, real, and under it, almost subliminal, were words, actual words in English, distorted but comprehensible.
Find the source. Find Vince. Stop the broadcast.
I'm on a train now, heading upstate to the university's radio astronomy facility, the Allen Array, where Vince claimed to have recorded the frequency. In my pocket is his keycard, stolen from his office during a wellness visit I made to campus yesterday. A visit that also yielded his home address, scribbled on a post-it note in the desk drawer of an indifferent department secretary. The silhouette sits across from me in the empty train car, visible only in the window's reflection as the New York countryside rushes past. It's more defined now, almost solid. Its face, if it can be called a face, is a blank oval, interrupted only by 3 vertical slits where eyes and mouth should be. It watches me constantly, waiting. I think it's following me to the source. I think that's what it wanted all along. The Allen Array looks nothing like the massive radio telescopes portrayed in science fiction. No giant dish pointed at the stars, no control room filled with blinking lights and anxious scientists monitoring alien signals. Instead, it's a collection of modest parabolic antennas spread across several acres of fenced property with a utilitarian concrete building housing the computer systems that process the data. Getting inside was disturbingly easy. Vince's keycard worked, and the facility appeared deserted despite it being mid-afternoon on a Wednesday. The main control room was dark. illuminated only by the soft blue glow of monitoring screens displaying incomprehensible data streams. The silhouette had grown more substantial during the train ride, developing a faint visual presence even when I viewed it directly. Now it stood in the corner of the control room, its elongated form seeming to absorb what little light was present, creating a deeper darkness in its rough outline. The breathing had grown louder, too, now audible even when I wasn't trying to sleep. An ever-present reminder that I wasn't alone, that something was observing my every move with alien patience. I found the workstation with Vince's name on a small placard. His desk was obsessively neat, papers arranged in precise stacks, pens aligned parallel to the keyboard, everything at right angles, so unlike the chaotic genius I'd known in college. On the desk was a framed photo of Vince with a woman and a young boy, all smiling against the backdrop of what looked like the Grand Canyon, a family I'd never known that he had. The computer required a password, which I didn't have, but taped to the underside of the desk drawer, a hiding place so obvious it almost seemed deliberate, was a USB drive labeled simply Backup. I plugged it into my laptop, which I'd brought expecting to need it. The drive contained hundreds of audio files, each labeled with a frequency and a timestamp. Contact 703.wave was there, along with a text file named notes.txt. The notes were fragmented, almost stream of consciousness, not the careful scientific documentation I would have expected from Vince. Signals persist at 31.2184 gigahertz, not random noise, deliberate transmission, pattern repeats every 3.42 minutes exactly, cannot determine point of origin, triangulation places sound simultaneously in 3+ locations. Impossible. Another note read, converted signal to audio spectrum. Something in the harmonics affects neural activity. Mice exposed to recording show altered behavior, increased maze-solving ability, but also aggression, unusual nest-building patterns, creating structures too symmetrical for random activity. Shannon noticed something watching her from the bedroom mirror. I said it was only stress or lack of sleep. I lied. I've seen it too, standing behind me when I work, only visible in reflections, but present. Signal getting stronger, no longer need radio telescope to detect it. Consumer electronics picking it up now. Shannon's phone, Will's tablet, coming through speakers at random intervals. Shannon took Will to her mother's, says she's not coming back until I fix this. I don't blame her. It speaks now, not loud, inside my head. Says it needs a door, says I opened a window with the initial recording, but it needs more, a broadcast, not just a receiving. It promises knowledge, advancement, says it's been waiting for a mind that could comprehend it. I've sent the recording to multiple colleagues, feels wrong, but I need to know if they experience the same effects. Need to know I'm not losing my mind. If multiple trained observers report identical phenomena, that's evidence of objective reality, not psychosis, right? The final entry was dated the day before I received the email. It's lying. Whatever this thing is, whatever came through when I first isolated the frequency, it's lying about its intentions. The more I broadcast the signal, the more doors I'm opening. It called itself a scout last night. Shannon and Will haven't responded to calls in 48 hours. Going to their location tomorrow. If you're reading this and I haven't updated in 24 hours, stop the broadcast. System is set to auto-transmit at maximum power, 2200 daily. Override code Shannon-Will-4937. I checked my watch. 9:17 p.m. Less than an hour before the automatic broadcast. If Vince's notes were accurate, if I wasn't simply following the deranged breadcrumbs of a colleague's psychotic break, then at 10 p.m., this facility would transmit the frequency at maximum power, not just receiving the signal, but amplifying and broadcasting it back into space, opening not just a window, but a door. The silhouette had moved while I was reading. Now, standing directly behind my chair, I could feel its presence like a cold spot, a disruption in the air that raised goosebumps on the back of my neck. The breathing had changed too, becoming faster, almost excited. I needed to find the transmission code, needed to stop this before whatever waited on the other side of that frequency could fully emerge. The main control terminal was locked, requiring biometric authentication, but beside it was a secondary workstation, emergency protocols, manual overrides. This was where I would find the transmission codes, if they existed at all. If Vince's notes weren't simply the ramblings of a mind already lost to whatever influence had come through with that first recording. As I approached the workstation, the lights in the control room flickered. The silhouette moved with unnatural speed, positioning itself between me and the terminal. For the first time, I could see it clearly, without the need for a reflection. A distortion in reality, shaped vaguely like a human, but with proportions that hurt the eye to focus on. The 3 vertical slits in its featureless face pulsed with a faint light that matched the cadence of its breathing. "Move," I said, my voice steady despite the fear constricting my chest. The silhouette remained motionless. The breathing stopped. Then, from every speaker in the room, computers, phones, the overhead PA system, came the frequency, no longer subtle, no longer at the edge of perception, but loud and insistent and somehow angry. The sound drove me to my knees, hands pressed uselessly against my ears. Blood started to trickle from my nose, an odd metallic taste on my tongue. Through the pain, I saw the monitors around the room change, displaying the same message across every screen. Broadcast initiated, transmission in progress. 9:23 p.m. It was happening earlier than scheduled. The silhouette began to change, its form expanding, becoming more substantial with each second the frequency played. The slits on its face widened, revealing not eyes or a mouth, but glimpses of something beyond, a space that couldn't exist within the dimensions of the figure, a void filled with suggestions of movement too alien to comprehend. I crawled toward the emergency terminal, each movement an agony as the frequency resonated through my skull. The silhouette made no move to stop me now. It was too occupied with its transmission, with becoming whatever it was meant to be once fully manifested. The override terminal required a password. With trembling fingers, I typed Shannon-Will-4937. Access granted flashed on the screen, following a simple interface with one prominent button: Emergency Shutdown. I slammed my palm against it just as the silhouette's transformation reached some critical threshold. The frequency cut off mid-note. The sudden silence as shocking as the sound had been. The silhouette froze. Its expansion halted at a point where it was neither fully formed nor the vague outline it had been. Half manifested, caught between states of being. Warning lights activated throughout the control room, bathing everything in pulsing red. An automated voice announced, "Emergency shutdown initiated. Transmitter power critical. Evacuate immediately." The silhouette began to contract, its partially formed features twisting in what might have been a rage or pain. It reached for me with limbs that bent at impossible angles, fingers elongating like smoke, given momentary solidity. I ran. Through the control room, down the corridors that seemed longer than they had when I entered, past equipment that sparked and smoked as the facility's systems catastrophically failed. Behind me, the breathing had transformed into a high-pitched keening that bore no resemblance to any sound a living creature should make. Outside, the night air was cool and still. The alien array antennas stood like skeletal sentinels against the star-filled sky. No longer transmitting, no longer opening doors to whatever waited beyond our reality. I made it to my rental car just as the concrete building's windows blew out in a shower of glass and a subsonic thump that I felt rather than heard. Fire bloomed within the structure, quickly consuming whatever the initial explosion hadn't destroyed, and with it, I hoped, the entity that had followed me from that first listening, the thing the frequency had partially pulled through. It's been 3 weeks since that night. I've told no one the full story, not the police who questioned me about the fire, not the university administrators who seemed oddly unsurprised by the incident, not even the new specialists who've replaced Dr. Rainier in my ongoing treatment. The silhouette is gone. The breathing has stopped. By all measures, I'm recovering from what the official reports call an acute stress reaction, triggered by environmental factors and sleep deprivation. But the frequency remains, not as an external anymore, but as a pattern etched into my neurons, a template that my brain continues to follow. Sometimes I catch myself humming it unconsciously. Sometimes I wake to find I've written strings of numbers and symbols that correspond to no mathematical system that I recognize. And sometimes, in the moment between wakefulness and sleep, I hear voices, not in English now, but in that impossible language of wrong consonants and folded vowels. They're angry, they're patient, and they're getting closer. I've begun to research sound dampening technologies, ways to isolate a room completely from external audio transmission, because I know with a certainty that evidence or logic that they'll try again, that somewhere, someone else has isolated that frequency, 31.2184 gigahertz, and is listening to it right now, inviting in what waits on the other side. And I know what I need to do. I need to find Vince. Not to save him, it's far too late for that. But to understand what he knew in those final days, what he discovered about the source of the transmission, about how to silence it permanently, because the frequency isn't just a signal. It's alive now, aware, and it remembers me. I hear it now, coming faintly from my laptop speakers, though all audio applications are closed, a soft, insistent hum that grows stronger with each passing second, and in the corner of my vision, just at the edge of perception, a familiar silhouette begins to form, its breathing synchronizing with my own. It found another door. Thanks for listening to my Dark Veil tale. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. It really does help me grow this channel so I can make more content for your enjoyment. Also, check out the linked video for another creeper-style story from Dark Veil Tales.